Every morning, a stray dog sat outside a veteran's cabin, staring at him with an intensity that could not be ignored. Day after day, through snow and silence, it never missed a moment. But when the dog suddenly failed to appear, the veteran's world shifted in an instant. Snow drifted gently across the mountains, blanketing the cabin in silence. Inside, James sat alone by the crackling fireplace, staring at the flames as though they might burn away his memories. He was a veteran, a man who had seen too much and returned with scars no one could see. Years had passed since the war, yet the sounds of gunfire and cries of the battlefield still echoed in his head. To escape the noise of the world, he had chosen this remote cabin hidden deep within the forest. Here, no neighbors knocked on his door. No voices reminded him of what he had lost. His life was a simple rhythm: chopping wood, fixing meals, and long nights spent listening to the wind. He had grown used to solitude, convincing himself he didn't need anyone. Until one winter morning, something appeared that would challenge that belief forever. It was early morning when James first noticed the dog. The snow had fallen heavily overnight, and the forest looked like a frozen painting. As he stepped outside to gather firewood, his eyes caught a dark figure against the endless white. There, about 20 feet away, sat a German shepherd, still silent and watching. James froze, the axe in his hand pausing mid-air. Stray animals rarely wandered this far up the mountain, especially in such brutal weather. Yet this dog sat firmly, its sharp eyes locked on him as if it had been waiting. At first, James ignored it. He turned back toward the cabin, trying to shake off the strange feeling creeping over him. But when he looked again, the dog hadn't moved. It didn't whine or bark, didn't beg for food or warmth. It only stared, unblinking. The next day, the dog was there again, in the same spot, in the same posture, as if carved into the snow. And then the next day, and the one after that. Each morning, James opened his cabin door, and there it was, always watching, always waiting. Something about its presence unsettled him, but deep inside, curiosity began to grow. Days turned into weeks, and still the dog returned. Every morning, James would open his cabin door to find those same steady eyes fixed on him. The dog never came closer, never crossed the invisible line it had drawn in the snow. Yet its presence felt heavier each day, like a silent question hanging in the cold air. James began leaving scraps of food outside, not admitting even to himself why he did it. The dog never touched them while he watched, but by morning the bowls were empty, the snow marked with faint paw prints. It was as if the animal refused to show weakness in front of him. Strangely, James felt something shift inside. He caught himself waiting for that familiar silhouette each dawn. The silence around his cabin didn't feel so crushing anymore. The dog had become part of his routine, though he never dared approach. One night, as the wind howled through the trees, James sat by the fire and whispered words he hadn't spoken aloud in years. Why me? The question wasn't meant for anyone, yet somehow, in his heart, he felt the dog already knew the answer. The longer the dog stayed, the deeper the memories clawed their way back into James's mind. Each time those eyes met his, he saw flashes of another life. A younger version of himself, dressed in fatigues, marching through the heat and dust of war. Beside him then had been another German shepherd, loyal and fearless, a companion who had once saved his life. That dog had been more than a soldier's tool. It had been his friend. James remembered the way it would nudge his hand after long patrols, the warmth it brought to a place where warmth was scarce. But he also remembered the day it never came back, the gunfire echoing, the empty leash left behind. Now, staring out into the snow, James felt as though the past had found him again. This stray, silent, stubborn, unwavering, was pulling at wounds he thought had long healed. Every morning, he told himself it was just coincidence, just an animal seeking survival. Yet deep down he wondered, was it fate? Had the universe sent this dog to remind him of what he once had and what he had lost? For the first time in years, James felt the sting of tears. One morning, James opened the cabin door and felt his chest tighten. The snow lay untouched, the trees heavy with ice. but the spot where the dog always sat was empty. For the first time in weeks, those steady eyes were gone. He stood there longer than he meant to, scanning the woods as if the animal might step out from behind the trees. But only silence greeted him. An unfamiliar unease crept through his body. He told himself it didn't matter, that strays came and went, yet deep inside, a strange hollow ache grew. All day he kept glancing toward the clearing. Each time the space remained vacant, the loneliness pressed harder against him. By nightfall, his cabin felt unbearably quiet. The fire cracked. The wind rattled the windows, but without that silent companion outside, the world seemed emptier. The next morning came, still no dog, and then another. Anxiety twisted in his gut. He tried to push it away, but the thought gnawed at him. Something wasn't right. When the third day dawned without those watching eyes, James finally admitted the truth. He missed the dog, and worse, he feared something had happened to it. By the fourth day, James couldn't sit still any longer. The emptiness outside his cabin gnawed at him, each hour a reminder that something was wrong. Finally, he pulled on his heavy coat, laced his boots, and stepped into the biting wind. Snow crunched beneath his feet as he scanned the frozen landscape. Then he noticed them, faint paw prints trailing away from the clearing. His heart quickened. Without hesitation, he followed. The tracks wound through the trees, weaving between drifts of snow and patches of ice. The deeper he went, the stronger his unease grew. The forest felt heavier, quieter, as though holding its breath. James pressed on, his breath forming clouds. In the icy air, each step was slower, more deliberate, the weight of dread pressing against his chest. Somewhere ahead, the dog had gone, and he was determined to find it. At last, the paw prints ended beneath a cluster of fallen branches. James's heart pounded as he pushed them aside, and there it was. The dog lay curled in the snow, its body trembling, one paw trapped beneath the heavy wood. Its breath came in shallow gasps, eyes dim, yet still fixed on him. For a moment, James froze, fear clutching his chest. Then instinct took over. He knelt, lifting the branches with all his strength. The dog whimpered softly, and James gathered it into his arms. "Easy, boy," he whispered. "I've got you now." Back at the cabin, James laid the dog beside the fire, wrapping it in blankets. All night he tended to it, feeding it bits of broth, stroking its fur as warmth slowly returned to its body. The dog's eyes fluttered, open, meeting his with a trust that pierced straight through the walls he had built around himself. For years, James had convinced himself he didn't need anyone. That solitude was safer than loss. But as the dog rested against him, he realized the truth. He had been waiting, yearning for a reason to feel alive again. Day by day, the animal grew stronger, and with it so did James. The silence of the cabin no longer felt suffocating. Laughter returned in small moments, sparked by a wagging tail or a grateful nuzzle. The stray hadn't just found shelter, it had given James one, two,